Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Eric Siepen and I'm pastor of the Village Church in Tucson, and across from me is Andy Littleton, pastor of Mission Church in Tucson, Arizona. And we just finished up a podcast with a little bonus that we're not going to tell you about that comes up at the very end. So you'll have to listen all the way through or do that little fast forward thing that you probably do anyway.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I actually am more into it personally now that we've finished it than when we started. So if you may have that experience, listener, maybe not. But I'm going to just give you the spoilers. We examine, first in talking about ourselves, but then more generally, the idea of vacation. And space and margin. There's a lot more to say on that. We probably will say more.
Yes.
Because this was an organic one, folks. This is a true Faith Over Breakfast, which is that we sit down and talk about something as two pastors, and you get to hang out with us.
And honestly, to tell you the truth, in any good conversation, the second hour that's not on the podcast would be the best hour.
Right.
Once all the ideas have been put on the table and you have time to think about them and process them with someone. So that's what we're doing for you, is getting you started on a conversation you should be thinking about.
This is true. And since we didn't tack it on the end, just a reminder, if you want to ask us any questions or engage with us, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com is how you get a hold of us.
Yes.
And we would love that. So reach out anytime.
Yeah, and I make a promise here. Shannon, I actually gave the book to my daughter, who's an experienced shipper to Canada, and she's going to take care of that this week for me. So you should be getting your book in a week or two.
Live updates on shipping.
There you go. Live updates. And we want to tell you, there is still some time. This is the last week that if you are not a villager or somebody who goes to Mission Church who wants a book and wants us to answer your question, email us at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. We'll send you a book and we'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, as long as we can talk about it on air.
There you go. And that book gets there's a few mentions of my book here in this podcast. So if you don't know what we're talking about, just you got to listen in.
You got to listen. All right.
Enjoy.
Hey Andy, how are you doing?
Eric, I'm great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
So what are we talking about? What is the...
Well, let's give people some context, because we did not even put a best of podcast up this last week.
Oh, we didn't. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have time to do that.
So we're going to talk about what keeps you busy.
What keeps me busy?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So last week I was on vacation.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's very busy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was very busy.
Where'd you go?
Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was on the beach. Like literally the beach was, I don't know, maybe 30-second walk.
Wow.
And
sweet.
Or a 5-second walk into the infinity pool that then looked out over the beach.
Wow.
Yep.
Man, did you see Benny Hinn?
Did not see Benny Hinn.
These just sound like the kind of tales that are told from the prosperity world, like the infinity pool.
The infinity pool. No, it was really gorgeous. No, it was 5 days, and
I'm glad you guys got that.
It was really nice. And
okay, I know what we're talking about.
What are we talking about?
So sometimes when you go away from the church,
yes,
then you come back and you have some clarity or some vision, or there's something that you reflect on.
Are you saying this as a general rule, or for pastors, or just for Eric?
I think it's common for pastors. Yeah. I don't know if everybody does.
Right.
But I think it's true for Eric. But
it is true for Eric. Yes, it is true for Eric.
It's something I've observed. I've heard these things from you. So in your stepping away, what discoveries, what questions, what are you returning with? What's new?
Well, here's an interesting thing. This vacation, nothing.
Oh.
Because a couple reasons for that.
Okay.
We didn't go by ourselves.
Mm.
We went with an avid Faith Over Breakfast listener who will remain nameless, and his wife, and so we spent time with them.
Yeah.
And we spent time in the water.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I come back with any revelation, it's just that I am, in a weird way, not that relaxed and a little bit more stressed out, and also very relaxed and have a lot more energy. So it's kind of this weird combo. And I think probably just a little like deep dive into Eric's psyche. My wife, here's the odd thing. She went out in the wave. We went out in the waves a lot, but she went out in the waves, and I didn't go because it was later in the day, and I was just tired.
You're scared of sharks, aren't you?
There's no sharks there. The three of them went out, and the waves, they probably shouldn't have gone out unless you're a really strong swimmer. And Sue got flipped around, and her arm got pulled in her back for, she kind of got wrenched. That was fine.
Okay.
It will heal. It was already kind of working out. The day we were leaving. Yeah, it was the day we were leaving. So there are crabs everywhere. All kinds of crabs, red crabs, and they climb up into the place, because the place we stayed was completely open except for the bedrooms.
They're like crickets here.
Yes, just like crickets. So one decides to be right at the door as Sue opens it, and it freaks her out. And so I think what she did was she yanked the door really hard, and it actually, she felt her arm trying to slip in and out of a socket. She already has some weird joint things going on. She's very, flexible, let's say.
Yeah.
And that really wrenched her shoulder. So literally she couldn't lift her arm above her head, and she's still struggling. So both shoulders are messed up.
Oh, that was the other shoulder.
Yes, it's the other shoulder. So going home, we're like, putting her backpack on her, helping her out. And so whenever your spouse is then in a large amount of pain and you're headed home, that, how that affects you. I mean,
sure.
you know this, like it's that you just kind of have this sense of, the person I deeply love is in pain.
Yeah.
And I want them to be relaxed and feel good after their vacation, and no, they're not. That.
And so there's like a letdown in the vacation.
Yeah.
And maybe not for you, but for me, a sense of like, I'm now trying to help manage this situation and help with it. But you're also kind of let down about the way that things have turned out or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't really put a damper on the vacation, but it just was like, oh man. Yeah. It's going to be a hard week, and she's a guitar player, and she's going back into like that, and it's already a week with her calluses not being used, and now she's got to try to figure out how to.
Oh man!
So it's just those kinds of things. You're like, oh, okay, this is. So yes, it was a great vacation, but I didn't have a lot of time. Normally, a vacation, I would find some time to really just deeply sink myself into things. I managed to read a half a book, which was good, but it was a short book, and did a little bit of writing, but I just didn't have that space. But I did things I would normally do. Go in the ocean every day, swim in the pool, went on a little cruise and did some snorkeling,
Maybe this is the pastoral vacation episode, because we are leaving Wednesday.
You're leaving Wednesday.
But it's an interesting thing. Like so I have actually, and I've confessed this to some people, so I'll just do it here.
All right, here we go. We should have confession music.
Confession music. That's confession music. Weird. That I don't know if I could confess to that.
Andy Littleton will now confess.
No, we've traveled more this year than maybe ever in my life.
Yeah.
Honestly, in my life.
Okay.
And definitely in our marriage. And I feel this kind of like guilt over this. It feels strange. Now, I counter that in my own mind with two things. Number one is we went like 7 years, and I was trying to think, where did we even go if we got away, we went to New Mexico, which is my mother and father-in-law were briefly, and it was a family visit, or we went up Mount Lemmon, or we went over to Southern California briefly. It was always brief and close.
Okay.
And so we didn't get these extended time. And a lot of times it was visiting somebody, staying. We went to Santa Barbara because our friends were out of town and they needed a house sitter for their apartment. So we had a free place
to stay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it was always the deal, and it had to be close because we were low on money and time. So there's a part of me that's like, it's been a long time since we had some space to do that this year. There's leaders in our church who can handle things, it feels, and that's been true, but I don't know, we felt more freedom, and so, but I'm dealing with this. And then the other piece is kind of interesting what you're saying. So our next trip is really about my mom. Very much it's about us all, but we're taking my mom, who's in her 80s, to show us some of her important places in her life up in Oregon.
Okay.
And then we're going to go to the town where Michaela's mom grew up, my wife. And we actually invited her mom to show us that place, but she opted not to go. But my mom's with us the whole time. So it's like the 3 generations, and we're all together the whole time. And there's already a sense of a little bit of tension of like, how many things are we trying to see here? Can we have some time to just relax with, kind of having that discussion, especially with my mom. So as we're going into this one, I'm actually thinking, I don't know that I'm going to be coming back relaxed.
Right.
Yeah. Like we've got the teenager, the husband-wife dynamic, the mother-in-law dynamic,
right,
every single day in the same car, and so there are different levels of vacation.
There are different levels of vacation.
In a way, I feel if you take the word vacate, like I am not in my house.
Mm-hmm.
We will not be in our house, but I will be with the people of my house.
Right.
10 times more than normal. Probably when Michaela and we did a little Mexico trip, just us, and we didn't do anything. We sat in the house and looked at the beach, walked on the beach, ate food, fell asleep if we wanted to. That one felt like a true vacation, and we need more of that.
Yeah, and I think, there is an element to vacation, especially as a pastor, where you are, I think, there's so much happening, like, and we've talked about this, and I don't mean to like complain about being pastor because I'm not, but there's this shifting that you have to make from like, to marriage counselor to theological student to teacher to kid, and children's ministry to,
and you go bivocational like me, and you add like 6 more shifts that you might have to make.
Right. Yeah, you're making all these shifts. And so once you hit vacation, you're unshifting. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to bring your brain to a place where it doesn't feel like it needs to be prepared to make complete thinking changes.
I've heard this said of pastors going on sabbatical that they truly don't enter into resting for like a week. And so the recommendation is to have, I believe I've heard, a week on the front end to actually get, there's when you stop doing the regular work, you're internally still there in a way.
Yeah.
And to actually exit that, to actually go into a period of rest and connection with God takes about a week.
Yeah. No, that's why after my sabbatical, I decided I had to have a month every year because I needed that week to just decompress and figure out how to get out of the cycle. 2 weeks of just enjoyable vacation and 1 week of re-engaging to be ready to hit the road running.
And I've done one sabbatical, and it was when I was in intense grief and processing that. That's where my book came from. But
how long was that?
It was in the month. Wait, yeah. There were kind of two little waves of it. I'd have to add them up to know exactly. But yeah, it was about a month. But that was I'm so grateful for it. But it was not there was never the actual just rest, and I don't think I could have.
Right.
I think God gifted me with that sabbatical at that time. I needed it, but it wasn't the rest that I got and that I was hoping for, would have hoped for. Really quick, as I'm thinking about this, I'm imagining someone listening to this, and I'm imagining that they've already stopped the recording. They've
stopped the recording.
These
people are tired
and I'm going to tie this up. They go, okay, you guys own your vacations. Why the heck am I listening to this? So
I really enjoyed my vacation, by the way. It was awesome.
No, I've enjoyed some of the trips we've done, like for sure. But here, this is an interesting piece. I do struggle with it in a way. I know people in our community who don't really get vacations.
Right.
Then I know people that get all kinds of them.
Yep.
And don't even classify visiting family as it's just like, no, we just visit family like 3 times a year or something. And that's not so much a vacation as that's a thing you do.
Yeah.
And then I think about the perception people have of ministers. There's people have very different ones. Some people are like, oh, you do so much. Thank you so much. And others are like, so what do you do? You know, you go around and you meet with us sometimes, and then you write sermons. And I mean, I know people who are like, I would love to do that. Like, I'm so jealous of that role. So then, now you need a break from that, you know?
Right.
Because some people are like, if I could sit down and write something, that'd be a break. You get to do that on a weekly basis. You get the break of, you read the word, you know? Anyway, let's help people understand in our souls why we need, like, what would happen if getting away, if vacations, sabbaticals didn't happen. You know, why should our people care and hope for this for us? Or should they kind of be coming back and going, listen, let's review your job description, because why are you leaving town?
Well, I think the weird part of it is, and this is well, let's just talk shop here. I mean, I know this is compelling podcasting,
radio,
but hey, who sits around and talks about these things? You can go listen to somebody else answer some questions if you don't want to hear this episode.
We've got to give the airwaves a break at some point.
Yeah,
you got to have it.
Can't be Jordan Peterson all the time.
Yeah,
come on now. No, I think this is not a job, and you got to get paid for it.
Yeah,
and so I think that's the hard part. Is my calling is in particular designed to call people towards Jesus, so that in their calling as a policeman, they can live in the gospel and bring the kingdom of God to their space. My job is to assist them in that. And as they wrestle with their marriage and with their parenting and with political things, my job is to articulate those things and to help people in that process. My job is to continually recenter people on Jesus. And recentering people on Jesus means that there's a spiritual conflict that people aren't quite aware of. And so I'm in the moment getting taken picture of.
See, you did this to me, and I just kept
kept going, and you were good at it. I'm not good at that. But, you know, I think so the spiritual warfare part is a big deal that people don't understand. And so that knocks you down, and it brings – pastors struggle with a lot of self-doubt, with a lot of loneliness, and with a lot of sense of like, people don't actually understand what I'm doing. And –
which some may be true, some may be just
it's
this
just the
inward
belief system.
battle.
Right. But I will say that because the majority of people who are pastors of churches are pastors of churches that have 80 people or less in them.
Right.
You carry a big burden that there isn't a lot of other professional people, or you might say people holding a job in your
These flies, man.
We have Herman the fly, who
Herman.
is all over the place at the Faith Over Breakfast podcast today.
He loves my microphone.
He does. He really loves the microphone.
He's just walking around on my microphone, mocking me. He's just like, "Ha ha! What do you do?
What do you know?
Nobody likes you."
But I will. So I mean, but the job is to, like we say, in a sense. I kind of have this vision of, it's like, Paul says, "Follow me as I follow Jesus." And in some ways, what I try to say is, follow me while I follow Paul, who follows Jesus.
Right.
And we're all trying to point people towards Jesus. And like I said, there's a spiritual warfare. So you need to recover from that and prepare. You can't be in conflict and just always be running. And vacation actually puts you in a place where you're like, yeah, I can get back in the game. I can be here and do what God's called me to do, because I was out enjoying his creation, or I got away and didn't have to think about it. And for my vacation, the beautiful part of it was there was really no cell contact.
Yeah.
So people my daughter called me 7 times. She couldn't get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Because we were in and out of cell service. And,
You said, "Sorry, honey."
Yeah,
that's and I've heard and read, there's been some interesting conversations, and I can't remember where, I wish I could, but about the idea of sabbatical or Sabbath, even from kind of a secular perspective. And they've talked about how there's a need for extended space from your work in order to actually be productive. So the most productive people walk away from their work on a regular basis, basically.
I would agree with that.
And so that's counterintuitive, right? It feels like the most productive are there all the time, and it's not true.
No,
sustained thought away from your work makes you more creative and more productive.
Yes.
So that, I think, needs to be. We need to see as Christians that God, in His wisdom, has given us the Sabbath as a means of training our hearts toward Him, but also because there's some practical wisdom in it. It's both. It's always both.
Yes.
And so we, as pastors, as shepherds of the flock, need to be there. We need to do that. To be productive,
right,
and to be, hearing God and taking care of ourselves and being creative and all that. And then the other, let's see. Well, anyway, why don't you tell me about what do you think about that? Am I onto something?
I think you're onto. I mean, Sabbath is a discipline.
Yeah.
And it's also a command.
Yeah.
And I think that what the invitation is to all of us, it's not just to pastors, is that you have to rest, and you have to let everything kind of drop, because what it says is you're not in control. And that's a big deal. And God is in control, and we submit all things to God. I don't need to do it all. So I think that's part of it, that is a lesson that all of us have to learn. But I wanted to address that, because all of our friends and the people we care for, including us, we all are on different economic places.
Yes.
And so I think
I have been in different economic places.
I think the interesting thing that's kind of, I don't think the church thinks about, people in the church, we don't teach this, is that as we take vacations and as we do things within our culture, which provides a lot of space to do leisurely things if you wish to do them,
tons of space,
it costs money. So people who have lots of vacations and have money to do that should actually consider people who don't, and how they might, you don't have to lose all their vacations. So, but they should think about, how do I allow this person to have something that I have, or at least get away from things. And I think, we have to think communally about Sabbath together and what it means to rest together and to invite others and help others out. It's kind of the thing of, I tell every couple in our church, you should be going out on a date every week. Well, not every couple has babysitting. Right. Not every couple has the money to go out on a date. And so it requires creativity. The one date I always tell people is get your kids in bed at 8:30, have a date space in your backyard. You can clear a space, and if you can drink wine, then get a inexpensive bottle of wine and 2 glasses.
The boxed wine at Target, we've found out, is the same expensive stuff. It's all coming from the same batch.
Right.
Some of it.
Get some dark chocolate and sit there and just enjoy one another for an hour and a half every week.
Yeah.
And create that discipline of a Sabbath in your marriage. Now, maybe if you can't drink wine, drink grape juice or drink, a drink that you like. O'Doul's. Whatever it is, just something that creates an environment that isn't expensive and enjoy each other. And I think that's the same for vacation. If you can't go on vacation, take a week off, shut your phone off.
Yeah.
Enjoy your family, take long walks together.
Yeah.
But make the choice.
So and here's where I was going to go second, which ties in with this. So you think about like Paul or somebody in the ancient world. You talked about following Paul as he followed Christ. So I don't see Paul taking vacations, right? I don't really know, but I'm just saying.
He doesn't talk about his vacations?
No evidence, yeah. But here, there's a huge difference between his world and ours. He didn't travel that far on his missionary journeys, but when he did, it took a long time. Yes. And this hit me when I was reading something about the Westminster Confession of Faith and the Westminster Assembly, and I realized the people who went to participate in that were away from their families for like a half year or more, maybe. And all they could do was write.
Right.
And so there was no incessant phone. There was none of this. And so they practiced Sabbath in both of those situations, Paul and these folks. So we're talking post-Reformation and, post-ascension here.
Right.
So they're built into their lives. If they traveled, it took time. When they focused on a task, they purely focused on it. In our modern day, we have to recognize that is such a rare moment for us. We have so few quiet, reflective times that people throughout history used to have all the time. And so I don't know that I'm even saying vacation is the answer to that. I've joked with people that sometimes vacation is the most stressful thing you can do.
Right.
And so the whole idea of people get vacations, they get breaks, I don't. Well, some of them aren't getting breaks. They're actually... I was in a Zoom meeting the other day with a local leader who was on vacation, but working still from vacation, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, what? Oh.
Well, you almost had him.
We almost had a dramatic fly slap on the podcast. That would have been amazing.
It would have been amazing. And I want to just stop here. I have a thing called the Buginator.
The Buginator.
And it is a gun that looks like a Nerf gun. But it fires salt. And
I have recently experienced one of these.
I have, and it has a little laser on the end of it. And it took me about a day to figure out how to use it. And now...
Why is it not here?
I can kill a fly in one shot. And it's hilarious because the salt hits that fly and he goes flying up and lands.
That's an assault rifle.
It is. It's the assault rifle.
Yeah. I was hoping there'd be a day I could share that joke.
That is so fun.
Yeah, they are fun. I experienced it recently. Anyway, back to it.
Yes.
We have no margin anymore.
Right.
And vacation isn't necessarily getting people that.
Right.
And so
I would agree.
Any of us from any economic situation can have that margin.
Yes.
And in fact, some of us, like the more wealth you have, many of us still aren't getting that.
Yes.
And so I think that maybe vacation is a modern grasping at something that we've lost, that people used to have just in the rhythm of their life. If you're going to journey from one town to another, you have 6 hours of walking.
Yes. And I do think that is one thing that's missing from the modern vacation, is time to let your brain, like, to calm down and to really settle into itself and to have a little bit of introspection into who you are. Because I think we're going. We need to get this done. I mean, I purposely chose when we came back, because yesterday was my day off. We came back on Sunday. I'm like, I'm not going to think about anything that has to happen today on Tuesday. And we have a lot happening at the village in the next 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm not thinking about any of this. I'm gonna just try to settle in to my home.
Yeah.
And just be there and, do some projects and get some things clean. 'Cause here's funny story. So we'll just go, and then we have before we went on vacation, we decided to order blinds for our whole, and we got them, and I was installing them, and we have in our living room, it's all block. So when you're mounting it, you got to have a nice hammer drill,
right?
And so I'm putting this thing into the block, and I slipped. Because it's, going to... And I was standing on a couch, dumb thing to do. And I slipped and boom, the heavy end of the drill hit our single pane window, by the way, which is actually better than a double pane.
It is. This is true.
Because I can fix a single pane, a double pane I cannot. And I went right through the window. And we were leaving the next day, so I didn't have time to pull it off.
Yeah.
And I'd never done it on this kind of window. They're really old.
Casement window. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can give you a tutorial.
I actually have looked at, I've done them before, but I'm not good at it. So maybe you can help me do that, or at least get a tutorial on how to do it. Mostly I try to figure out how to pull the window out so I don't have to do it there, but I may just have to do it right in the spot.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, well, I'll just have you give me the tutorial offline.
Yeah.
Anyway, vacation. I think what you're talking about is actually better. Margins. We need to build margins. And while you were talking, I was thinking that I read recently Rousseau when he wrote one of his famous things in a trip to Paris, which was like 3 or 4 weeks. He wrote the whole thing in his head. And I thought, when would I ever have time to write an entire essay in my head?
So yes, absolutely. So I wrote this little book when I did my sabbatical, and I did talk about how I was dealing with grief. But one of the things I didn't take, I took my computer, but I didn't engage any. I was like, I will only do phone calls with my family, and those once a day, and unless there's an emergency. And I really, really tried to be out, and I
How long were you away from your family?
There was a 2-week span, and then I did another Bisbee thing, but there was a little more. I came home a couple times.
Okay,
but I mostly hand wrote the original stuff, and then I put it together on a computer.
Okay.
Anyway, I did these long walks, and I also just had a lot of transit time. I didn't have a vehicle until I bought the old truck, so I even walked around town. So I was in Albany, Oregon. I wanted to go to the store. It's going to be an hour.
Right.
And that was one of the things I came away from that with was the sustained thought and how I was able to think through something I was dealing with maybe 20 different times and come at it from another angle and set it down and come back to it. And some of these, I took a 6-hour walk down the beach, just went and, and the ability you have to think and rethink and turn it over and then go, well, I'll come back to that. It was something I went, I don't have this in I need more. And that it is fleeting. But yesterday, for example, I went up to Mount Lemmon. Some of our folks were having a planning session up there. I went up for a little while. And I wanted to take a walk, didn't end up being able to. But I thought on my drive, I'm going to turn off music. I'm not going to do any content. I'm just going to drive down this mountain for an hour. And that was helpful. That was good. I'm learning to just build in more, take opportunities for margin. And I wouldn't say I've solved all my problems, but doing that more is helping. And I've tried, this has been a lifelong thing I kind of learned from my father, but taking walks where there's no agenda, and I'm trying to do more of that too. So that's some of that's probably even more helpful than vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think regular margins.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Yeah.
You have to, and they have to be your margin.
Yeah.
What is a margin for you?
Yeah.
It will look differently. I almost got him, guys. Herman almost went down.
Yeah. And then he came back to me.
Now he's over there. He's like, I'm not going over. Yes. I think that the application of today's podcast, if you made it all the way here, is you need margins. Pastors need margins. Sometimes it looks like vacation. Sometimes it just looks like your pastor saying no and turning off his phone and for extended periods of time and really creating space for himself or exercising or creating space in your schedule to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would assume that this is the need that everyone has in order to be a believer who is of the kingdom and bringing the kingdom to people. Is if these margins aren't happening,
right,
it will be very difficult, and you will not. You won't have time for this sustained thought, prayer, connection with Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, yeah.
I'll say an interesting podcast for us to do would be, what does it look like for Sunday when you attend church with your community? What does it look like for that? How do you have to step into that for it to be a Sabbath for you and not work?
That's a great point.
And we should talk about that on
we should talk about just the whole idea of what going to church should be in general. This is a big...
We should readdress this because you and I were big on this at the beginning.
We were.
And we haven't addressed it.
And in our moment now, it's... People are asking... I'm hearing that question or statement of, so I don't see why I need to go to church as a Christian.
You know what? I think I will hunt up the podcast where we have done that, and I'll send you a link to them, and we'll listen to them. And then we can come with some of our points that we made previously and readdress now where we've been.
There we go.
All right. So there's our next podcast.
Hey, we know. And it won't be next week.
No, it will not be next week.
I will be unavailable.
Yeah, he will be unavailable.
Yeah.
And if I'm inspired, I might do a podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Or if there's one of those is good, I guess. Bring one out of the vault.
Bring one out of the vault.
Okay. Well, Eric, good to see you. I've got to go get an eye exam.
Yes,
very soon. And so I'm not running late. That's good.
That is good.
But I also would like to not just run straight out of this building. So
right.
I guess we've had a podcast.
We've had a podcast.
And I'm about to find out how much my vision has degenerated since the last time. Can I? This is just a little bonus piece. I have some glasses I'm excited about. I've been thinking about getting lenses for these. They're the ones that they give to prisoners. Mm-hmm. They're the United States issue.
Okay.
And I found these at a thrift store, and I finally was just like, I'm doing it.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I want to see you in them.
See how often I bring them out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get lenses for those bad boys.
All righty.
Yeah, it's a big day. and the people at the optometry office are gonna be like, what's wrong with you?
You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.